All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Houston React Developers Group. My name is Tracy. I'll be the facilitator for the event tonight. And we also have co-organizer Fabian. He will be managing all the incoming comments. Tonight's topic is releasing React apps faster with feature flags and hooks with David. And before we get started, before I pass it over to him, I always like to tell everyone, give everybody a heads up. Please feel free to add any of your questions in the chat. As we go along, if David wants to pause and see where everybody's at on their questions, we may do it that way. And then also, we always leave time at the end of the presentation for any final questions as well. When that happens, Fabian will facilitate those with David. Before we get started, there's always a couple of announcements. First off, we always have our survey. Fabian, if you can just make sure that that's shared with everyone. The survey is to see if anybody has any topics that they want us to cover or have somebody speak on. And if you are interested in presenting in that same survey, you can leave us your information. Also, don't forget that all of these videos are on our YouTube channel. Fabian, when you get a sec, if you can add that for everybody as well. Please feel free to go look at our video library, and then this one will be included as well. As soon as the recording is done, that will be up on our channel. At this time, if we can all make sure on the presenter side that we mute and hide our screens. David, if you can please just let us know when you are done. That way we can finish up with any of the final questions. And go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hi there. Welcome to this talk. As we mentioned a moment ago, this is releasing React apps faster with feature flags. Unsurprisingly, the topic here is going to be talking about how you can take your React applications and release them faster and be more secure in the process. My name is David Burrowes. I am a front-end software developer at Split Software. We make a feature flagging system, but there are others out there. Before here, I was a Node.js framework developer at Box. The framework was for building microservices. And before that, I worked at other companies, Delphix, VMware, and others, building front-end interfaces. My plan today is to do a little bit unusual. My plan is to actually do an interactive demonstration of these features. So my plan is to be writing code and doing deploys. The network and technology being what it is, when you try to do things live, they may break. So I have slides as backups. So we'll fall back to those if we have a problem. The application that I'm using is actually currently running. You can get to it by going to this URL that you can see on the screen here, https://:/feature flags in React with hyphens between the words .web.app. And if you go there, you'll see something like this. I will provide a couple points during the talk, ask you to try things out. And of course, you're welcome to poke at it as we go and do deployments. So I'm going to move the slides out of the way for the moment and now switch to the code editor here. What the process here that I'm going to go through here is I'm going to go demonstrate adding a feature in a traditional way to this application, point out some of the sort of drawbacks that come from that development, that standard practice. And then I'm going to go back and do the same thing again with feature flags. So you can see kind of both patterns here side by side. For that to really make sense, so you can follow all the code changes I'm making, we're going to spend a couple moments here and walking through the application and then walking through the corresponding source code. So as we make changes, you'll be able to follow what I'm doing. If you go here to the application, again, at https://feature-flags-in-react.web.app, you'll see a really exciting login page. You can type in your name and start using it. And right now you'll see it's really boring. It shows you an icon and a link which takes you to a Wikipedia page about feature flags. So that's the visuals of the application. The code involved over here is, if we come over here, there's a login page. This is, of course, in React, and you can see it's a pretty standard React component. It's using hooks to get some state. It comes down here, it shows a UI like we see over here on the right. And when it's done, it'll then call this router component. And the router component is a very dumb, homegrown component which says if the current page is home page, show the home page. And the home page looks like this. Hooray. The home page over here, you can see, again, really simple component, just displays the link and the text here. You'll see over here, there's a step 1 and step 2 folder. These are just places where I can copy and paste the code, so you don't have to watch me typing lots of code while we go along. So that's the orientation around both the code and the application. So hopefully we're all oriented. So why don't we get started? So we're going to demonstrate here what the traditional development process is. So you're the technical lead on some project. Your project manager comes to you and says, we've done a lot of customer analysis, and we know that if we go build an application or a feature in our application that allows you to display a set of emoticons, we'll be able to make millions of dollars. This is going to be really exciting. And you say, that's great. Let me do some engineering analysis. I think it's going to take me, my team of 5 people, 2 months to do. And everyone has agreed. You're ready to start doing this. So what do you normally do? You're going to go and create a feature branch, like git checkout -b, emoji feature. Okay. Now I've got my feature branch. And what's the first thing I'm going to do here? Well, I'm going to go in here and I need to start to modify my code. So I'm going to add my emoji page here. And if this is a normal development process, you're going to work for a few days, and then main is beginning to get differently aligned. There's more stuff going in there. Your feature branch is getting out of date, so you got to do some merge. And you say to the team, hey, we got to get main merged into our feature branch. And no one wants to. And someone eventually volunteers or gets voluntold, and you start merging into your feature branch. There's conflicts, so you need to resolve those. It's a pain, but that's the cost of doing business. You continue doing your development then. You're going to go and we're going to take to the home page and add a link to allow us to choose the emojis. So let's take the home page here and put it in here. And then we need to modify the router to actually show the emojis. And as you're going along on your 2-month development cycle, you're continuing to merge main, and it's a lot of pain. You resolve the conflicts, and sometimes you make a mistake and you have to kind of break things, so you have to fix that. But your development cycle goes along, and you get to the end of your 2-month cycle, and somehow you've planned exactly, so it is going to take 2 months. You're done with this feature, and now you're ready to talk about doing deployment. So let's commit our changes. Commit all my work. And once that's done, you're going to go check out main, git merge emoji feature. And maybe there's more merge conflicts, but you resolve those. So now you're ready for your deployment. Probably by now your manager is coming and saying to you, like, okay, we've done all the testing, QA's done testing. Are you confident that we're ready to release your feature? And you say, yeah, no problem. I'm sure it'll work just fine. But in your heart, you're going, stage is different than prod. The machines are different sizes. The network configuration's a bit different. The databases are different. It's probably not a big deal. We haven't had problems before. Sure, I'm sure we can deploy it. But you kind of know you're lying to yourself and just crossing your fingers and praying. So we'll go ahead and start doing the deployment. So say npm run deploy. And the deployment process starts, and while this is going on, your managers are going, I hope this is good. We're going to roll this out, and people will start using it. The New York Times is going to start using it. They're preparing an article about our company. This is a great opportunity. This, of course, makes you nervous, but again, that's just how software works. You do a deploy and suddenly it's live for everyone. So you finish your deploy and you go in to use the app, and hooray, the feature's there. You can see your emojis here. You can come in and generate your emojis. You're psyched. It's good. Good to go home. You go home and then you start getting email saying customer success is reporting customers are having some problems. And you're going like, it looks fine to me. You go in and use the app. You work through the workflow they talked about. And you do this, oh my gosh, yes, there is a problem. Production's broken. Your manager's calling you, your CEO's paging you, the New York Times is writing an article, everyone's reminding you, and all your customers are broken if they try to use a new feature. And so you're sitting here beginning to panic, fight or flight, tunnel vision, what do I do? Do I roll back? Do I roll forward? How do I best deal with this? If you're lucky, you've got some, nice fancy system, Kubernetes, you just need to roll back the pod and that'll take a few minutes. Or maybe if you're less lucky, you're running a Jenkins pipeline with a bunch of checks along the way. And so it's actually going to take like 20 minutes to get the fix deployed out there. You're basically pretty stressed at this point. So you go and you decide you're going to try to roll forward. Maybe you can find the problem. In this case, I have a const when I should have a let. You're asking yourself, how in God's name did we miss that in the QA cycle? And you do your deploy, and everyone's knocking on your door going, when's it going to be done? When's it going to be done? And you're going, it's on the way, it's on the way, hoping it's going to be okay. And the deploy happens. You're watching your logs. You go out there and say, like, is it actually good now? You go in, do the flow. Okay, your emojis work. Phew. So this is one example of how you might have a sort of normal non-feature flagged release process. And let's talk a little bit about where the drawbacks are here. I want to call out 3 problems. The first is, while you're doing development, you need to keep your feature branch in sync with main. If you're doing this feature development, it takes 2 months. For 2 months, you're merging main. It's moving along as other people add features, and you're needing to keep that merged and up to date, which is just tedious. The next problem here is going to prod is very risky. You deploy something and everyone sees it. So there's a lot of bureaucratic process around going to prod. You have checklists, you have lots of testing, you have quality processes, sign-offs, whatever. There's a lot of work to get something into prod. Or there isn't, and you're just constantly putting stuff out, just praying you're not going to bring your company's site down. The third problem is when something goes wrong, it can take a disturbingly large amount of time to fix the problem. Again, even if you're using something new and fancy, it may take just a few minutes to roll things back. And if you're not lucky, it can take, half an hour, days to undo the problem, which can be immensely stressful. So the problems are tedium, bureaucracy, and panic. Okay, so let's go back. Let's roll back in time. Now let's imagine we have a feature flag system. Let me clean up my branch here. Status. Okay, npm run deploy. Let's put that out. So while that's happening, again, my PM comes to me. Great, we need to build a feature to look at emojis in the application. It'll make millions of dollars. You do your engineering evaluation. Sure, it'll take me, with my team of 5, a couple months. Everyone says, great, go ahead. You do your specs, and you're ready to start work. What's your first step? If you're using a feature flag system, your first step is probably to go to your feature flag system, which in this case, I'm going to use my company's feature flag system here. You can come here and create a feature flag. We call it a split. And I'm going to call this emoji, because I can't type emoji. And now I've created my basic feature flag, and I'm going to set it up so it has some rules associated with it. And you can see here, this says that my feature flag has an on and an off version. The on is what I will use to show the new version, and the off is without that new feature added. And you can see down here, our default rule says that by default, everyone's going to see the off version.
Hey David, can you zoom in on the right? I want to make sure that make sure everyone can see.
Sure can. Thank you. So is that better? So I've got a feature flag here called emoji. Here's the on and off version. And here's the default rule, which is saying it's off by default. So I'm going to save these changes. You can see some deltas of what we're changing in the rules, confirm it, and off we go. So now we have our feature flag. This is my first step. Now I'm going to go start my development. And thank you for the call for the larger size. If we need to do that, anything else, let me know. So now that I have my feature flag done, I'm going to start my development. So first thing I'm going to do is come in here and modify my login page code. I'm going to copy my login page, come over here, paste it in. And the first thing you'll see here is I'm wrapping my router in I'm wrapping it in a component which starts up our feature flag SDK. So you drop this in, the SDK starts up, it starts talking with the feature flag servers, and this sets up a React context so that everything in that subtree can access the feature flags. The next thing I'm going to do is go to my router. This is the same as we saw before. I'm going to add access to the emoji page. I'm going to put that in. And then I'm going to go to my home page and do essentially the same thing, but let's talk about that a little bit more. So the heart of it, you see down here, I have the same thing. I have the link, which shows the emoticon, the emojicon, and the word emojis here. But there's a couple differences. The first thing you see is up here, we ask for all the treatments, that is all the versions of the feature flag. And I'm going to say emoji because that's what we named our feature flag up here. And I'm going to pull the information out about that specific feature flag. I get this value called treatment. And so down here, I'm saying when the feature flag is on, show this, and otherwise don't show it. This is kind of the key thing. The final thing I'm going to do, of course, is add my emoji page. Now, I'm in the middle of development, so initially I'm just going to put a dummy page in. We'll flesh this out as we go along. However, what I'm going to do here is say npm run deploy and deploy the code as it stands now here. Now, if you haven't used a feature flag system before, your first thought may be, oh my goodness, what are you doing deploying an incomplete feature into prod? Everyone's going to go click on that link and see a null component. This is going to be a bad experience. But if we come here and use the application, you can log in, you see we don't see the link. It isn't there. And the reason for this is that when the feature flag SDK gets loaded, it pulls the feature flagging system here, says, give me the definition of this feature flag, which you remember says, show, don't turn it on. It shows the off treatment of this feature flag. And it says, okay, is it on? Nope, then just don't show this. So here I'll pause and point out this is the first benefit of using feature flags here. You remember before, you're running on a long-lived feature branch, you're constantly merging with main. When you're using a feature flag system, what you tend to end up doing is you create some changes, put them up for a PR, get a review, and then you merge to main, and then you deploy it. In the feature flag world, the deploy process and the release process are now separate. I am putting the bits out there, but they are not released to anyone. This essentially removes that constant syncing with main and means that you can go basically directly from your commit to prod without any stop along the way. Now, that's great. You say my bits are in prod. That's good, but I'm not exactly sure why that's useful, aside from not having to do all the merges. From here, I'll go back to my feature flags. And now I'm going to add a rule here which says that if the current user is David, then turn the feature on. And by the way, you can be trying this all at the same time. This is running live out there. I'm going to save this. So now the rules are being updated. They're getting propagated out through the internet. And now if I log in as David, you can see I see the emojis. And as you expect, I get a null component here. Very, very boring. But if I log in as someone else, if I log in as Emily, you see, I don't see this. This is something we weren't looking to solve. That wasn't one of the 3 original problems, but it actually proves to be really useful. This is often called testing in prod. Because my bits are in prod and because I can control exactly who this is released to, it doesn't just go to everyone. I can cherry pick individual people and put it out there. Most of my customers see their normal experience. And again, I'm just putting new bits out there every PR several times a day, but then I can cherry pick who gets to see the new feature. When I'm just starting development, I probably just turn this on for myself or maybe my team. So we can be looking at the feature in prod as well as on our local machine. As time goes along, as I said, you may want to let the QA team start using it if you've got one. You may want to allow your automated testing system start to use it. As the feature gets more mature, you'll let the product team and even the whole company see the feature, even though it's not released yet. One of the benefits of this is, in my experience, stage is always different than prod. One way or the other, there's some difference. And in this way, you aren't taking this blind leap when you do a final release to your customers of putting stuff in prod and praying it works. Instead, if this feature has been being delivered for 2 months, for 2 months, the feature has been in prod. We've been trying it out, testing it. Everyone's trying to see if they can break it. So when we get close to the time to actually doing the release, we're very, very confident the code is good. And in addition, you remember one of the downsides of the traditional release process is there's all this bureaucracy around getting something into prod. But in this world, the bureaucracy is very low. The risks of putting bits into prod is very low, and the blast radius of a problem is very, very small. So it's much, much easier to be putting your bits in prod. Literally, my group pushes several times a day. You know that there are companies, you'll read about companies out there pushing hundreds or thousands of times a day sometimes, and it's all because their work is sitting behind feature flags in some way. So that was the second drag that we had in the traditional process. Another aspect of that is, it gets released to everyone. With a feature flag system, again, we have all these rules, which I'm not going to explain just now, controlling who you can target this feature at. But we'll come back to this in a minute. Let me finish up the feature. So development's been going. I've been updating the feature as I go. Let's actually put the whole emoji page in place. We'll save it. We'll deploy it again. And that will give us the final bits in prod. So now we need to decide how we're going to release this to our customers. You might want to, decide. There's lots of ways you can release this to your customers. You might say, we've got a beta program. We only want to show it to the beta customers. Or we have some customers who are very eager to get new things and some who are very reluctant to get new things. We want to show it to only the folks who are eager to get new things. But another common practice is to do a percentage rollout. So you could, for example, say, I want to show this only to 1% of my customers, and the other 99 are continue to see the old experience. That allows you to very much limit what happens when things go out. For the moment, I'm going to do it 50-50. and save my changes. And now I would love it if people out there would try this out themselves and send in feedback. Which version are you seeing? Are you seeing the new one or the old one? So if I log in as Emily now, Emily sees the emojis. But if I log in as George, George doesn't. So how about you all out there? Anyone who is trying this app, can you see, do you see it on or do you see it off? I'll give you a moment to try it out and type in your feedback.
Yeah, for me, David, I see it. I
You
don't
see
know
the new version?
if I refresh and I just go in as a different person, let me see, I'm changing my name here. Yeah, no, it's not showing.
Okay. Yeah, and if you log in with the same name, you're going to get a consistent response. This percentage distribution doesn't mean randomly decide to show it or not show it. It means randomly pick users, and then those users have a stable experience thereafter. So every time someone in that 50% on group logs in, they're going to get the on version, and the other people are going to see off. And so in this way, using the feature flags, even though you've been doing all this testing in production, still when you actually release it to real customers, some customers are going to find new ways to use things that you haven't thought of before, or maybe the load from your customer is more than you can simulate yourself. And now, you're discovering, hey, as we crank it up from 1% to 10%, wait, the Redis cluster is beginning to overheat. Maybe we should turn it back down a little bit and diagnose that. The feature flags, because the feature flags give you a great deal of control on who gets to see your feature, you can very gradually roll something out, and as you go, be very confident that things are going well. In some cases, you have none of those concerns. You know your feature isn't going to do any problems. Again, you've been doing testing in production the whole time, and we have had customers at my company which do a release on a Friday night and don't think about it because they know they're not going to get any alerts or anything about that. So this can give you a lot of confidence on your release. The next thing that might happen is as you're doing the release, let's go back to Emily here. Despite all our testing, despite everything, you can still end up with bugs. And we end up with the same scenario. Customer success calls you and says, some customers are having problems. Here's what they seem to be doing. And again, in the traditional release process, you're panicking now. You're going, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I roll back? Do I roll forward? How long is it going to take? How much money are we going to lose? Stuff like that. But when you're using a feature flag system, instead, you're going to come up here and come over here and kill your feature flag, which sounds really nasty. But what that does is that shuts the feature flag down. It just completely turns it into the off state. No matter how complex your rules are, everything is now off. So if you go back here and log back in, I'm going to log in as the person who was always allowed to see the feature. I don't see the feature. And so you can see here, this doesn't take hours. It doesn't take minutes. It takes seconds to roll a feature back. If you've got an emergency situation on a newly released feature, you can have it out of there almost immediately. And then because you actually haven't changed bits in prod, now you can go back to testing. What did we miss? Try and figure out what's going on. If you need to, you can turn it back on gradually and try and identify the problem from there. So in summary here, traditional release process, as I said, is tedious, trying to keep your feature branch up to date with main. It's bureaucratic. Everyone wants to protect prod. They're scared of touching prod. So there's a lot of process around to protect it. And it induces panic when something goes wrong. With feature flags, you're essentially developing on main, so that is really smooth. There's no tedium there. The bureaucracy around putting something in prod is very low because the risk is very low, and you can be constantly putting things in prod so that when you get to releasing, you're pretty confident it's in good state. And when the inevitable happens, you can shut something down really quickly. Plus, we have this added benefit of testing in prod, where you're doing development, you're seeing what's going in prod all the time, which means that, again, the release process it can be a no-op from everyone's standpoint. That's the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. This is kind of the basics of why feature flags are useful. This is the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is beyond the scope of what I'm prepared to talk about now, which is really useful with feature flags, because you can start to ask, if I've got feature flags out there, here I've got one, but maybe you've got 20. You want to be able to know, of the 20 feature flags, where's getting a spike in 500s now? Where is that coming from? You want to know which of the feature flags is this related to. And using a good feature flagging system, you can figure that out and identify the feature flag that you need to turn off. Or your business metrics are going south and you want to deal with that. Or conversely, you want to know, hey, we just put a person year into this feature. Are people using it? And you can measure, you can do this test of the A side and the B side, both versions of with the feature and without. Are we getting more sales? Are we getting more time on site? Are we getting more engagement? You can be measuring that on sort of each side of the feature flags, even if you've got a bunch of feature flags out there. So again, the point I'm wanting to make here is that you can release much faster with a great deal more confidence with feature flags. I can't even imagine doing development without feature flags at this point, but there is a whole bunch above and beyond that. So since that's the end of my core talk, does anyone have questions?
Hey, David.
Yes.
Awesome presentation. This was go ahead and I'll jump the gun, Tracy. Sorry. Sorry. Hold on, Tracy. There you are. Okay,
There we go.
First, or I guess Tracy said, but this is where your part comes in. I don't know if you have anything before handing off to questions.
No, it was an awesome presentation. I thought you did an excellent job on giving real life scenarios. And I hope that any of us are famous enough developers to have New York Times writing an article about us. That was great. I loved it.
Yeah, so we do have a few questions. I'll go ahead and I'll go down. Looking in the order in which I should ask these questions. Let me move this one down. Okay, so the first question is, feature flags. Do you have the use of feature flags? Or I'm sorry, make sure I read it at some point. Sorry, I'm reading it from okay, I think you might have did a quick misspelling, but as far as feature flags beyond front-end development, specifically like APIs or data engineering, is that something that Split IO, assuming this is where John was asking the question, are these things that Split IO supports?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm showing the React side because that's the theme of the talk, but the whole principles apply equally well on the back end as the front end. I think we had one place where we were trying different sorting algorithms and put that behind a feature flag to see which gave, A or B, and decide which was going to give better results to users. In fact, just as I was demonstrating here on our backend, all layers of our backend, each service, we don't put any new code out that's even slightly risky without having any feature flags. So we do that across the stack. You mentioned APIs, and that begins to get interesting because APIs have a different kind of life cycle and contract. If you've got public-facing APIs, you often don't want the behavior to be sort of completely varying based on the feature flags. So you might use feature flags whether to expose a new API. You might or might not use a feature flag to change the contract of that API, and that's a nuanced conversation that we could probably spend another half hour talking about. But broad big picture, absolutely, feature flags belong on every layer of the stack. Same thing. I wouldn't want to do software development without them anywhere.
Gotcha. And we have a few more. So yeah, I hope you have some time.
Yeah.
The next one, and this is a question that I had myself: large enterprise applications. So the question is, could we have feature flags for specific user types if we have large enterprise applications? And I'm gonna even take it one step further around Active Directory and login or authentication solutions like that.
Yeah, you definitely can do things with different user types, even different, maybe you want to do it sometimes on the user, sometimes you want to do it on like the customer. Like if you're a large enterprise application, you're probably selling to individual customers, and then within those customers, you've got users. And so you may want to be varying your flags kind of on both axes, depending on what the feature is. Um, you know, I go to talk sometimes and I get really sort of annoyed if they start sounding like advertisements. So I don't want to be pitching my own company's product too strongly, just because at me as an individual, I find that a bit of a turnoff. There are other feature flagging systems out there. Each system is going to offer slightly different bells and whistles here. The way we work here is you hand it something we call a key, which in this case is just that username we typed in. It could be a user ID, it could be an organization ID, it can actually be any ID you want. If you wanted for some reason to be varying this level of your feature flagging by geography, you could be passing a key in here. In addition, you remember we made this call to get all the details about the feature flags. One of the things I really just waved my hands at here is at this level, you can also be passing in a bunch of metadata. And these rules here, which I also waved my hands at, especially these targeting rules, you could be targeting on different axes. So if you wanted to be targeting your feature flags at users by geography and the plan that they're paying with you, if you wanted to be varying your feature flag behavior on several different axes at one time, you can set that up with our feature flagging system and some others to control exactly which set of features you're exposing to your customers or users. Did that answer the question?
Yes. And by the way, you can still hear me, correct? I had to switch headphones.
Yes.
Perfect. The next question, and before we get to the big question, is Split IO, is it only on the cloud, and this is a question for me actually, or does it offer like on-prem solutions? More specifically, and for my company, we deploy our solution to clients, and though there is somewhat of I guess like an air gap between our headquarters or our code and our clients, having a way to like roll out features slowly would be awesome. So is that something that Split IO offers?
We can do that. Obviously, if you've got an air-gapped solution, it can be, there's more complexity and nuance around that. One of the nice things about our offering is that a lot of the smarts about the decision of whether to show feature A or B is delivered to the client. There's an added benefit about security, which I'll come back to in a minute. But if you have a situation where some of your customers are on the cloud and some are in an air gap situation, you can set this up so that you are giving your people, on the broader internet, feature flags where you can turn it on and off, just like I'm saying. If an air gap solution, obviously you can't go kill it in the same way here because you're not getting this live update of the flags, but you can still be feeding into the SDK information for it to allow what feature to show it. So if you do like a monthly drop into your air gap thing, you can update your flags there too, because all the brains of the decision aren't on our servers, they're in your code.
Gotcha. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so the other part of that I wanted to mention, a corollary to that is we are not sending any, unless you really go out of your way to give it to us, we are not sending any of your customer data to our servers. So if you need to live in the EU or or you just don't want to be handing your customer information, names, whatever, to us, you don't have to do that. In fact, you kind of can't unless you go out of the way. If you give us a generic ID, we don't know what that is. We're just operating these symbols you give us. So you can, with feature flags, be keeping all your proprietary data and your customer data to yourself. And I think that's a really important thing to be thinking of with these things.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised no one asked that question. So we need the audience to step up their question game with that.
Yes, please.
So we did have another question come in, but I did want to ask the first. So we have two questions right now. What have you found to be the best way to organize your code to support feature flags? Afterwards, trying to avoid lots of duplications here.
I actually have another talk I give sometimes. You can dig up a copy of it on the web. It's called something like Managing Feature Flags Effectively, which the front-end group uses at Split. It actually involves a certain amount of duplication, but we've found that one of the big drags to using feature flags is removing them. There can be a lot of work to sort of disentangle one version of the code from another. And so we've built a pattern on our front end code, which involves a little more duplication of code, but it optimizes us to be able to remove the stuff really quickly, because that's often the big friction point here. With that said, if you use, I was using a React, I was using this thing here. What was it? We're back to this. I'm picking this exact tailored thing of saying, if this feature flag is on, then show this or not. And this level of usage, you can narrow down to something really, really small. So, this could be a conditional and, do something else. And in this case, there's very little duplication. Most of the code is completely the same. So I hope that kind of answered the question. My point is, you can use feature flags and get really, really tailored, really, really focused uses of those feature flags, so you don't end up with a whole bunch of hard to read bloat. But there are multiple aspects to introducing feature flags that is worth looking at holistically. And there's trade-offs. Both approaches work fine.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
but it's really hard to answer that because everyone's application, everyone's React code is different. Really, what it looks like. So the last question here, and then Tracy, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you. Any pointers as to deploying components of an enterprise application to Kubernetes clusters using feature flags, feature flag UIs, API consumers of a Kafka topic as an example? So I think from reading, I know this is a mouthful, and I'm sorry, McKenna, for butchering your question, but I think I might be along the same lines with the question that I have, which is we have our product existing with Kubernetes, and we have multiple containers, all of which it would be really nice to be able to flip a flag, and whether it's the data engineering, API, front end, all of these containers, all of which become aware of, hey, this flag is on, or this is who we should allow access. But any pointers or anything that you've seen in your experience around this?
If I understand the question right, I think I'd phrase it as, we want to be able to have one logical feature which spans microservices, and I want to be able to sort of turn this feature on and have all the microservices start responding to it in kind of the same way. Is that the question?
That is the way that I phrased the question. That's the way that I took McKenna's question. If not, McKenna, if you want to re-ask him, and maybe I missed something, but that's the way that I took it.
Yeah.
From reading his.
You definitely can do that. I mean, this flag here is really, that I set up here, is really just accessed through the API key, which was over here. And so if you have multiple services and they all use the same key, essentially, they can pull down the same, or there's other keys, but they all point to the same storage area. You can pull down the same flag on multiple services. There's a small problem of synchronization, like they're all going to get it, milliseconds apart. But that is generally a very, very minor, if not a non-existent issue. And so there's no reason you can't have one feature flag that turns on a whole bunch of microservices at once.
Gotcha.
And we actually do that pretty routinely here.
Also, if you have a video that you'd like us to link, please share with us and we'll be sure to include it in the description of this video. But with that, Tracy, I know we're approaching time. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you.
Yeah, David, thank you again for an excellent presentation. I felt like it was awesome to see somebody be able to live code and give an example. I was actually trying it out on my iPad and it was working for me. So
Excellent.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I did try a couple different names just to see the functionality of it turning on and off for per user. So it was really neat. Once again, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and thank you for having me. I love talking about this. It's I think a very interesting space and kind of the wave of the future of software development. So I'm glad to be able to talk about it to you all.
Oh, absolutely. We're so glad to have you. This was awesome. Without further ado, I mean, I guess that would conclude for tonight. Appreciate everybody, joining us. Thank you again, David. That we always extend the invite out there if there's anything else that you ever want to present on. I love, like I said, I love the real life scenario. Like, hey, what if this happens? What if you have this going on? Because that is the reality of it, right? I mean, that's the reality of a day-to-day. And I really enjoyed that, being able to relate. But yes, you are welcome to present with us again in the future. And I hope everybody learned something new tonight. And, once again, this will be available on the YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it. Or anybody that's a little late and catching up to the game and decides to watch it later. But with that, thank you so much. Fabian, any last words? Uh-oh, you're muted.
There we go.
Right.
No last words from me, but thank you again, David. We really appreciate it. It was really cool for you to show us some of the things that Split.io or just feature flags in general, and making more people aware of this, as making more people aware of feature flags as a solution to rolling things out versus deploying to production.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Okay, that's it. See you guys next time.